Welcome to the Blueprint Room. I am your chief architect, and today we're going to outline the ultimate structural master plan for constructing high-scoring, completely bulletproof essays for your Cambridge AS-level Afrikaans language explainer. If you're preparing for Syllabus 8679, you already know that an essay isn't just about putting nice-sounding words on a page. No way. It is literally about engineering a load-bearing, deeply analytical argument that can survive the ultimate stress test from a Cambridge examiner. Today, you aren't just a student. You are a master structural exam engineer. And as your chief architect, I'm going to show you exactly how to reject poorly framed sentences and build an unshakable thesis foundation. Before we even look at the drafting board, I want you to picture two junior builders I work with all the time in this room. Let's call them Alex and Sam. Now, Alex is a hard worker, right? But Alex has a terrible habit of acting like a bricklayer in a massive rush. Alex tries to stack up way too many heavy bricks, which are basically raw facts and statistics, without ever checking if the essay's steel frame can actually support all that weight. And then there's Sam. Sam just wants to throw up shiny glass panels and decorative features everywhere. Sam is always saying, "Hey, look at these fancy complex Afrikaans idioms I memorized." But Sam constantly misses the core command words of the prompt, trying to decorate the building before even cementing the foundational columns. Today, we're going to make sure you don't make Alex or Sam's mistakes. All right, let's get our hard hats on and get straight to work.
For the 2027 exam series, your essays are going to be built on three very specific terrains: law and order, health and fitness, and travel and tourism. Now, you might be looking at these and thinking, well, those are three completely different construction sites. Discussing the economic impacts of travel and tourism obviously requires a totally different approach than debating the strict legal nuances of law and order, right? Actually, scratch that. That is the very first major misconception we need to completely demolish today. Whether you are building an argument about the justice system or public physical well-being, the underlying steel framework of the Afrikaans Language 8679 exam remains exactly the same. They all require the exact same impartial, load-bearing structural rules. The Cambridge examiner is looking for the exact same analytical columns, the exact same procedural methodology, and the exact same evaluative penthouse on top, no matter which lot you're building on. You have to master the structure first and the terrain second.
So, here is our master blueprint for today's build. It's broken down into four critical phases. Phase 1 is the foundation. Phase 2 is the framing. Phase 3 is our mid-build inspection. And finally, Phase 4 is the penthouse. Let's dive right in.
Okay, kicking things off with Phase 1, the foundation, where we'll cover core principles and theoretical architecture.
Let's move over to the digital drafting board and start pouring the concrete for our foundation. Because look, without a solid base, even the absolute most eloquent, beautiful Afrikaans vocabulary will totally collapse under examiner stress testing. The foundation of your essay requires what we call theoretical architecture. This means establishing precise definitions and incredibly clear causal relationships, right from the very first paragraph. Top marks are consistently awarded to builders who can engineer cross-topic connections to completely unfamiliar contexts. Practically speaking, this means you can't just define a term in a vacuum. You have to establish a clear causal relationship. For example, if you are tackling a health and fitness prompt, you don't just write a generic sentence saying that exercise is good for you. You have to draw a direct architectural line showing exactly how a lack of local fitness infrastructure directly causes an unsustainable strain on the public health system. And then, for those absolute top band marks, you engineer a cross-topic connection. You could take that health and fitness issue and link it right back to law and order, maybe by discussing the legal responsibilities of the local government to provide safe, accessible public spaces. That right there is how you build a theoretical architecture that makes a Cambridge examiner sit up and take notice.
So, why do so many candidates' analytical structures just completely collapse when it comes time to evaluate evidence and draw conclusions? Well, let me bring up a complex, high-tariff Cambridge past paper question on the drafting screen here. Let's call this the foundational challenge. I see builders failing this challenge every single day because they ignore the building regulations, which are the exact assessment objectives enforced by Cambridge. Let's bring Alex back into the picture. Alex looks at the drafting screen and tells me, "Chief, I've got 15 heavy statistics about crime rates for this law and order prompt. I'm just going to stack them all up in paragraph 2. It's going to be huge." And I have to look at him and say, "Alex, buddy, you are acting like a bricklayer in a panic. You're stacking up massive, heavy bricks of raw data, but you haven't even checked if your essay's steel frame can support that weight to actually draw an evidence-based conclusion." Alex has built a wall of facts, but with zero evaluation. And then Sam chimes in. Sam says, well, Chief, check out these advanced Afrikaans idioms I memorized. I'm going to put shiny glass panels and decorative features on every single sentence. And I have to tell Sam, listen, you cannot hang fancy glass before cementing the foundational columns. You completely missed the core command words in the prompt. Both of these approaches lead to total structural failure.
The building regulations in the Cambridge syllabus are absolutely crystal clear on this. The assessment framework severely penalizes wide, superficial walls. Instead, it heavily prioritizes logical, deeply rooted analytical columns. Analytical depth is always greater than superficial breadth. The examiner does not want to see a sprawling, massive, one-story warehouse that briefly covers 100 different points about travel and tourism with zero depth. They want a sleek, incredibly strong skyscraper. They want you to isolate 2 or 3 highly specific points and drill deep down into the bedrock. You need to focus entirely on the command stress points of the prompt. When you see a command word like evaluate or analyze, I want a flashing grid to appear in your mind's eye, showing you exactly where your paragraph columns must align. If you build a purely descriptive structure that just lists facts, like Alex did, instead of an evaluative one, you are creating a building that will collapse instantly under the weight of the mark scheme criteria. You have to drill down.
Moving right along to Phase 2, the framing. This is where we look at your procedural framework and technical methodology. Now it is time to install the heavy ironwork framing. We're going to utilize what we call the method mark strategy. You see, Cambridge awards heavy points purely for your procedural construction process. They are closely watching exactly how you handle your raw materials. To secure these method marks, your blueprint must explicitly demonstrate 3 core structural skills. First up, data interpretation. When you are looking at text and tables, you can't just casually summarize them. You must actively extract specific data points and explicitly interpret the relationships between them. Next is practical application. You must apply the exact correct formats. If the task requires an article format versus a formal report, the architectural shape of your text absolutely must match those specifications, utilizing the appropriate specific terminology for that context. And lastly, your final output. This isn't just a summary paragraph at the end. You must draw firm, evidence-based conclusions that synthesize all your evidence into one unified evaluative framework.
So how do we actually rivet all that evidence to your main thesis column? By following this exact 5-step deconstruct, solve, evaluate sequence. I literally had Alex and Sam in the blueprint room yesterday having a massive peer debate over this exact framing. They were trying to construct a model response paragraph for a health and fitness prompt. Alex slammed his blueprint down and argued, we need to fill this entire paragraph with a massive cement block of terminology definitions to show we know the vocabulary. But Sam immediately challenged him and correctly pointed out, if you pour a solid block of definitions, you leave absolutely zero hollow space for a dynamic counter-argument. Without that flexibility, our structure has zero chance of hitting the top band scores. They were going back and forth challenging each other's blueprint framing. That's when I had to step in with this 5-step problem-solving sequence. I told them, guys, we are rewriting this paragraph skeleton live right now to comply perfectly with the examiner guidelines. First, identify the given information. State the core fact. Second, break it into logical steps. Explain the context. Third, solve systematically. Introduce your main argument. Fourth, check for reasonableness. This is exactly where Sam's counterargument provides that crucial structural flexibility. And fifth, make justified recommendations. This sequence is your ultimate ironwork frame.
All right, everybody, stop what you're doing. It's time for Phase 3, the mid-build inspection, focusing on examiner warnings and site safety.
Halt construction. We have a mandatory site inspection. Right before we pour the final layer of text concrete to secure this high-scoring paragraph framework, you need to make sure your construction line is permanently reinforced. Hit the subscribe button on Ace the Exams right now and turn on all notifications to receive our weekly structural grade upgrades. Whether you are laying down an IGCSE foundation or setting up an advanced A-level skyscraper, this channel is your primary heavy-duty grid. Okay, site inspection passed. Let's get back to the blueprints.
During this inspection, we need to analyze the precise command stress points enforced by the principal examiner reports. Builders, listen up, because the examiners report that structures instantly collapse when candidates make these top 3 fatal errors. Number 1, forgetting proper format. If your prompt asks for a persuasive speech on travel and tourism, and you just write a standard descriptive essay, your structure fails the building code instantly. You lose easy marks right off the bat. Number 2, failing to check presentation. The spelling, the grammar, and the paragraphing in your target Afrikaans are literally the mortar holding your bricks together. You can have the best argument in the world, but if your mortar is crumbling, the wall falls.
And number 3, which I see all the time, answers that are not specific to the given context. If you write a beautifully memorized generic essay about law and order, but it doesn't anchor directly to the specific scenario provided in the exam prompt, you have essentially built a gorgeous house on the completely wrong empty lot. It's a total structural failure.
And here is a direct quote from the Principal Examiner Report. Candidates consistently confuse key terminology. Always define terms before using them in extended responses. This brings us right back to Sam's earlier mistake with the shiny glass panels. Never, ever try to hang shiny, decorative terminology on your essay before cementing those foundational definitions. If you start throwing around complex Afrikaans terms regarding legal statutes or macroeconomic tourism trends without first defining what those terms mean in the context of your specific argument, the examiner will immediately red tag your cite. You have to prove that you own the vocabulary, not just that you memorized it. Define the core terms in your opening. Cement the columns. Then, and only then, can you start installing the high-level vocabulary from that secure framework.
We've made it to Phase 4, the penthouse. This is where we elevate your work into critical analysis and evaluation. This is where we separate the basic builders from the master architects. We are elevating your structure from a basic descriptive level to a top-band evaluative masterpiece. Look at the comparison on the drafting screen. A candidate who builds a purely descriptive structure creates a building that absolutely will not pass the higher-order assessment objectives. The examiners strictly demand the evaluation of alternatives. A descriptive structure merely lists facts and information without critical thought. It's like walking into the ground floor lobby of a high-rise and just reading the directory board out loud. Sure, the information is technically correct, but there is zero depth. An evaluative structure, on the other hand, takes the high-speed elevator all the way up to the penthouse. From up there, it looks down at the entire city grid. It actively compares different approaches, it evaluates alternative solutions, and it justifies its final recommendations based on the solid evidence built up through the lower floors. If you want the highest marks, you cannot live in the lobby. You must construct the penthouse. To ensure your penthouse analysis is truly load-bearing, you have to proactively evaluate the quality of your evidence. When you are presented with data in your prompt, you do not just accept it blindly. A master architect stress tests their materials. First, identify the limitations of the evidence. Then, explicitly outline any assumptions being made by the source text. Next, explore alternative interpretations. Could there be another reason for this trend in health and fitness? And finally, measure exactly how those limitations and alternatives affect your final conclusions. If you can write a paragraph that says, while this data suggests X, it assumes Y, which means we must also consider Z, you are showing the examiner that your critical analysis is completely impenetrable. You are riveting the data directly to the evaluation. Now, I am speaking directly to you. For our final live site safety audit, we are initiating the interactive rebar stress test. Imagine a complex source data chart flashing on the blueprint matrix right now. You have a 60-second visual countdown timer ticking away. In that pressure cooker environment, how are you going to extract the single most high-yielding core metric and encode these blueprints into your memory? Your core metric for success under exam pressure is using a visual story method. I want you to permanently encode these structural concepts. When you sit down in that exam hall, picture your essay physically. Paragraph 1 is the wet concrete, defining your terms and cementing the foundation. Paragraphs 2 and 3 are the heavy steel ironwork, where you use that 5-step procedural framework to lock your evidence to your thesis. And your final paragraph is that shining glass penthouse, where you look down, explore the alternatives, and evaluate everything. If you visualize the physical building, your memory will never fail you, even when the timer is ticking down.
Blueprint secured. We have mapped out the entire theoretical architecture. We've watched Alex and Sam debate and correct their framing errors. We passed the mid-build inspection, and we successfully erected an evaluative penthouse. Now that you possess the unshakable foundation for the law and order, health and fitness, and travel and tourism topics, I have to leave you with one final, critical question. Is your next essay build actually ready to survive the rigorous stress testing of a Cambridge examiner? Remember, a blueprint is just a piece of paper until you actually start pouring the concrete. So I want you to go look at your last practice essay. Be honest with yourself. Did you build a sprawling, fragile, one-story descriptive wall that's going to fall over in a strong breeze? Or did you build an impenetrable, load-bearing, evaluative skyscraper? You have the tools. You have the blueprint. Now get out there and go build something absolutely extraordinary. I'll see you on the next site.